flower up close. Quick shot. It has. I like different fall colors. I don't need necessarily always the brilliant orange to be excited about it. You can see this is starting to turn. This is just before fall along the garden, and it's getting this buttery yellow that I really find very attractive in combination with oranges and reds in fall. Another self-clinging vine. This vine climbs pretty much any way you let it. This is Bignonia capreolata, common name is crossvine, and it will grow 40 to 50 feet if you let it, but it's really fairly easy to keep in check. It has this wonderful, often bronzy, purpley new growth, and you can see it's reaching some tendrils out. And the way it does this, each leaf is divided into 2 leaflets and a modified leaflet that's a tendril. Now that tendril is perfectly adapted for climbing up tree trunks. It'll grab hold in any little crevice in the tree trunk, and even if it's not a tree trunk, it can grow right on a masonry surface. The tendril itself will swell slightly into crevices in a masonry surface, say brick or stone or something like that, and so it can grow on just about anything. Additionally, the tendrils will also wrap, so you can grow it on a trellis or a wire. They don't climb anything. Yes?
I have a question about the nature of vines. To me, it's amazing. I had a vine growing, and it grew out this way until I put a picket fence, and then it started growing toward the fence. How did it know I put a fence up?
How does the vine know to climb? You know, I could talk about science and evolution and all sorts of things that God only knows. What I do know is that they will blow around in the wind as they get longer, and when they come up against something, they'll naturally grab. There are also some things that are, they literally grow back and forth trying to find something, and there are some things that are heliotropic, like a sunflower will turn its bloom. The growth will go to the sun, which has that same waggling effect. I'm reaching out, I'm looking for something to hold on to. Some of these things will grow on the ground until they find something, and then they'll go right up as soon as they find a vertical surface. Yes?
I was wondering, a vine that's clinging like that, or putting tendrils in the wall, like a stone wall or a brick wall, how destructive to the wall itself is that vine going to be?
Very good question, and this comes up a lot. Self-clinging vines on a wall, how destructive is that? Okay, now, it depends on the wall, depends on the construction material. If you're talking about wood, I never recommend growing a self-clinger on wood. I recommend things that grow away. You want to try to suspend them, some sort of structure off the surface. It's better for the plant in a lot of cases because it's getting airflow. It's better for the wood surface because it's getting airflow by all means. I've got some specific examples later on in the lecture. As far as the self-clingers, if you've got a masonry surface or stone brick with mortar in between, the New York Botanical Garden did a study a number of years ago, and what they found is it gives the appearance of the plant reaching in and damaging the mortar. It's not going to damage stone or brick. Okay? It gives the appearance of damaging the mortar. What's actually happening is that as the foliage dies off naturally, as the plant is growing in there, if you've got a dense canopy of foliage with dead foliage tucked in the back, as that breaks down, it generates humic acid. And humic acid is deadly to mortar. It just dissolves the mortar away. And that's what's actually happening. And then the vine is growing into that opening there, so it looks like it's the vine that had caused that to begin with. It's the dead foliage. How do you get away from that? One, you can grow things that don't build up a whole lot of that. Two, you can grow deciduous self-clinging vines like Virginia creeper. The foliage drops away every fall, and you've exposed all of that surface to the elements, the wind, the rain, it's washing out any of that debris that might build up the humic acid. So as long as your wall is structurally sound to begin with, the vine itself is not actually going to be harming the wall. It doesn't say anything about when it gets up in your gutters and in your shingles of your roof. I wouldn't recommend growing anything.
Yeah, right.
I don't recommend vinyl siding. But yeah, it can get up under vinyl siding. Nothing will really cling to the vinyl siding.
Oh, when it gets in there.
It'll get up under it and wreak havoc. Yes. Bignonia capreolata is absolutely evergreen for us in 7B. Here, you're on the border where it's going to drop some foliage depending on your exposure. Okay, it'll be mostly evergreen in a good shelter. Whoever grows this, evergreen?
Evergreen.
Or deciduous?
Evergreen.
Evergreen. Okay, so you're safely evergreen here. Okay, that's right. Yep.
So is it hardy ones today?
Yes, it's hardy in 6. Yep. So these are the flower buds here coming on. It is mostly a spring bloomer. You will get some of them that can do a little bit of repeat blooming. This is a selection I like a lot. This is Tangerine Beauty. And it's easy to grow, flowers a ton, and it's, I think so far, the best summer repeater for me. Now, that's not to say you're going to see a whole lot of color, but you will see a few blues kick through the summertime, and then when the temperatures drop at the end of summer, I've actually seen a nice little secondary flush. Nothing like it is in the spring, though, nothing like in this picture. This is a selection called Dragon Lady, and there's a whole story I haven't got time to tell you, but it's wonderful. It's all about the Dragon Lady and getting this plant, and the gentleman who finally was able to get this plant. And it's gorgeous. It's deep red, straight down into the fruit when grown in full sun. Unfortunately, extremely difficult to propagate. Once it's established, once it's rooted and all that, and offered up, it's a fine plant. But I mentioned that it's hard to propagate because that's why you don't really see this one out in the trade very much. There's Dragon Lady up close. And this is our selection. This is Bignonia Athens. And my wife actually found this. And it was growing on an old chain link fence by the side of a field in significant amounts of shade, and yet was still very flowerful. Really nice. And that's obviously, that's sort of the holy grail is finding something that'll bloom well in the shade, because they aren't that significant. And I really like the color of this too. It's kind of a reverse of a lot of the other ones, where the fruit is darker than the corolla. And speaking again about altered seasons, this is Capreolata at Chanticleer Garden, where if it's grown, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, if it's not in as sunny a place, this is pretty much what you're going to be able to expect in winter color. But where it has more sun exposure, you can get some really pretty fall and winter foliage colors out of it, in the purple range and the russet kind of colors. So again, an alternate season of interest for this plant. Let's talk a bit about twining vines here. This is wisteria. All right, no booze, no hisses, no rotten tomatoes. Good. This is native wisteria, and I really hate it when an entire genus gets trashed because the Asian forms of the species of the genus are really horrible. They're highly invasive. They are all over the place in Georgia. I don't know if they're terrible here, too. They are? Okay. But the natives, which you almost never see out in the wild, are just wonderful plants. It's true that the flowers aren't nearly as dramatic, but they're very, very straightforward plants to grow. You do some simple spur pruning on them every winter, and you get plenty of flowers off of them. And the nice thing about that is these will also repeat bloom. I've actually seen this blooming again fairly significantly in October in Pennsylvania. Yes?
I found the native wisteria on a farm near the roadside and the riverbank also.
Wonderful.
But in the blooms, it's not that brilliant a blue.
Uh-huh.
But I've never found any seeds. And the vines are all along with other vines. How do I propagate
They're not terribly hard from cuttings.
cuttings?
Yeah, you can take cuttings, dip them in
What time of year?
I go with firm greenwood, so not soft tips and not brown stems, but this year's growth, but still firmed up.
Firm green.
Yeah, and 0.3 powder is enough for them.
Okay.
0.3 would be Hormidin 1. This is longwood purple, growing and flowering in deep shade. This is at the old nursery manager's property from Longwood Gardens, and he brought a pot home and dumped it. You know, we all have these what we call black pot ghettos. All right, you all know what I'm talking about. And he had one, and it had spilled over and had grown out and was growing all over this old rotten wood pile in significant shade. Now, it was a loose and rangy plant, but at the end of all of these stems, you could find flowers here and there throughout.
What would cause them not to bloom?
What would cause a wisteria not to bloom?
I've had bloom and they were none.
Okay, this is another beauty of the natives versus the Asians. The Asians will often take many, many years to start blooming. The natives bloom much younger. Yeah.
What's the species of
Wisteria frutescens. There are several forms of the color forms. Longwood purple, probably many of you have heard of amethyst falls. This is nivea, an essentially pure white form. And this photo was taken at Chanticleer Garden, and you know, bless their hearts, they're keeping it at that size. It's just amazing. As you can see, this is the flower up close. You've got mostly white with a little bit of golden yellow in the very inside of the little pea flowers. There's another very closely related species, Macrostachys or Macrostachya, that I think they call it the Kentucky wisteria versus the other one's the American wisteria. There are some folks who group it into being the same, all one species. I don't think so. As you can see, the flower form is, the racemes are much longer and a little bit looser in habit. This particular one is a very nice white flowered selection growing. In this case, this photo was taken at Chanticleer Garden, and this is Clara Mac, very nice white. About 8 years ago, somebody apparently in Minnesota found Wisteria macrostachys, and they loved it, and we love it too, and they named it Blue Moon. It is big, beautiful, bulletproof, hardy, easy to grow, a wonderful plant. In other words, the kind of plant that only comes along once in a... Right. Thank you. Thank you all for working with me on that. And it's really pretty, and this goes back to that question about blooming. This is in a 2-gallon pot, and it's already doing all of that. And macrostachys also repeat. They flame 3 times a year. They'll have 3 major flushes of flowering. Very pretty plant. Nice color. And this is, not sure which one this is, growing on a porch in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. A cousin of that, this is Epios americana, or groundnut, and it is another one of those stories. I was kayaking on the Broad River in Georgia, and I saw off in the distance, what is this red wisteria? Oh my God, and of course, my car taught the kayak what to do. Sure enough, the kayak was over there, my children were groaning and paddling on down the river. Once I got close enough, I realized what it was. The flower clusters aren't nearly as large. They can be fairly significant. It's a pretty plant, though. And it's called groundnut because it makes these really interesting string of pearls tubers along all of the roots. And it was a staple food source for Native Americans pre-Columbian times. Delicious. That's an old gnarly tuber there. But I've actually eaten this. Not that one, but I've actually eaten it. It's not bad. It's kind of a mealy. It's kind of like a potato, but a little bit mealier. And my understanding is that it has a much better nutritional profile than regular potatoes. A lot of phytonutrients, a lot of higher protein levels, and then it's actually quite good for you. Another twining vine here. This is, of course, a native honeysuckle, and this is sempervirens. And this is one of those points where it really, to me, really can make a significant difference to go with a well-selected species, a well-selected specimen of the species. I was at River Farm, the American Hort Society's garden, and saw two native honeysuckles, two Laniferous sempervirens, not 5 feet apart from each other, and one of them was absolutely covered in aphids, and the other one was perfectly clean. Now, those aphids aren't going to kill that plant, but they're going to cause a lot of significant cosmetic damage to the plant. The flowers will be all distorted and messed up and not open properly. It's going to keep, it's going to keep your hummingbirds away from it if they can't get down in the tube of the flower. And hey, it's just ugly. And so I really recommend, you don't have to go with hybrids necessarily in this case, but a well-selected form of the species I think is always a good choice. This here is a fine example. This is Lanifera major wheeler. Yes?
Why were aphids all over one and not the other?
Good question. They were not selected forms. They weren't the same plant. Maybe they were grown from seed. Maybe they came from different sources. One of them was obviously much more susceptible to the aphids. Aphids crawl, aphids fly. And with that kind of population pressure on the one plant, you would certainly have expected to see at least a fairly significant number on the other plant that close. Then certainly some would have flown over, done their reproduction cycle over there, and that would also have them on there. Had none. Some are simply more susceptible than others. Some plants are more susceptible to disease than others. The selected named forms of Laniferous sempervirens were chosen for good reasons. They're disease resistant. They don't get aphids as much. They have bigger, more colorful flowers that have a longer bloom season. This is a perfect example of this. This is major wheeler, and this thing is a flower factory. It just goes and goes and goes. It does have, it's a twiner, but it's kind of a lax twiner. It has kind of a bit of a floppy habit, so it actually benefits from a little guidance, maybe a twist tie here and there, getting it up onto whatever structure you want to grow it on. Some of the other forms are a little bit more erect.
It's fairly big. Is it pruning or?
They really only need to be pruned to be cleaned up. Keep them in the space that you want them. They don't require any specific annual pruning or anything. And of course, Laniferous sempervirens has plenty of berries available for the native songbirds.
Now, would you say that's true of the cultivar more berries than the wild ones that we have here?
Not in the case of major wheeler specifically, but I would say one of my favorites for the berries is the next slide, and I'll mention that. This is a really nice selection of an orange one with kind of yellow in the throat. This is called Magnifica. I do like this a lot as an orange for its flower power. It is possibly just slightly more susceptible to a little bit of bacterial spotting. It's not a significant issue for it if you have it in good airflow. Well, this one is one of my favorites. This is John Clayton, and it is probably the best of the yellows. There are a couple of other named ones. There's a Sulfurea and a Flava. What I like about this one is that it, for us, has a tendency to bloom straight through the year. We have flowers on ours now. We had a mild winter, it just never stopped. Sometimes it gets knocked back and stops flowering a little in December and January. But otherwise, it's a flower factory. And it produces quite a number of berries as well. You have a question, Joe?
I was just saying, it blooms here, started blooming here in March.
There you go,
10
okay.
years old.
Actually, my, John Clayton is one now.
Right,
I need to
yeah.
go back and second one then.
Of the John Wheeler, is there a Crimson Cascade that comes from this?
Yes,
That I got from y'all?
yes,
That's also got some blooms on it now.
yep. Crimson Cascade is also a great selection.
You have-
Major Wheeler is out competing it in the trade. So I've kind of put it on the sideline, and we're more focused on Major Wheeler now.
Oh, okay. You have a couple in your catalog that are fairly small, they're like 4 feet. Am I remembering right? Or
Not the natives,
not the name?
not the natives, no.
Oh, it was a native.
Yeah, we have quite a number of different honeysuckles available. And these tend to, if you allow them, they'll tend to get up to 20, 25 feet tall. But really, they're very manageable within a smaller space. If you put them on an arch or something like that, it's really very easy to keep them. Do a heavy pruning once every 2-3 years. Give them a little bit of summer nip here and there as needed to keep them under control. They're really very garden-worthy plants. And again, we're talking sometimes about out of season. The bark on the stems of this gets this kind of a neat sort of a papery, almost exfoliating bark that I find ornamental in the off season. And this also brings it to a point, something I talked about in the morning lecture was growing plants together with each other, co-planting. I don't discuss it as much in this lecture, but to me, when I look at this is a chanticleer, and the foliage on this starts at 5 feet high and goes to about 8 feet high, and it's gorgeous up here, and there's all this interesting bare stem twining going on down below. I look at that and I say, there's a trellis. And so, and I would grow clematis on this. Easy to do, plunk it in there to grow right on up that. Which brings to the point, growing these things naturally together. This is Clematis virginiana growing on multiflora rows and doing a pretty good job of beating it back there. It's growing over the top of it. And the clematis typically are very light structured plants, and they only hold on by their petioles, the leaf stems. And so they're not going to choke anything that they're on. They're really very gentle to their host plants. Of course, we saw this slide earlier. It's a favorite of mine, so we're going to show it again. This is Clematis texensis growing here, and what we're doing here is we're complementing the colors there. That glaucous foliage of the host goes really nicely with the hot pink of the bloom of the texensis, which is a plant that I just adore. Also, unfortunately, very challenging to propagate. That's why you don't see a whole lot of these in the trade. You do see a lot of the hybrids of texensis, but the species itself is fairly hard to come by, which is a shame because it's just a stunner in the garden. Very easy to grow once it gets established. Hundreds and hundreds of blooms. I have one that grows to about 12 feet, but that's a little bit unusual. And the hummingbirds love it. They absolutely love it. This is, and I've actually tasted Clematis texensis nectar, and it's quite sweet. Yeah, hard to hear. It belongs to the Viorna group of clematis, which are the little bells, and they're all native through the eastern seaboard and the southeast and out up into the Midwest and as far north as Illinois. And there are quite a number of species of them, actually, and they're all just as adorable as the next. This is Viorna itself, so there's a species that is typical of a group. A little purplier than the texensis, and the bell opens up more in this case. This is versicolor. Picture eye. And you can see the common theme. They're all very closely related. Various heights. The picture eye will get up to 10. I don't know for versicolor, to be honest with you. There's a lot of variability. As you go from region to region, some of the Bjorners will be much taller than the others. And what's happening now, actually, is there's a fella who is working on breaking these out and re-identifying, and is actually about to officially name up to 7 more new species in the Bjorn group. One of them's from Arkansas. It's coming up. This is Addisonii, named for Addison Brown, one of the founders of the New York Botanical Garden. And it's a cute little thing. It only grows a couple of feet tall. It's really nice. This I had it growing in Pennsylvania, scrambling over a large rock. It was a really nice effect. This is Clematis crispa, and you can see the little crispy margin there. This is a selection we call Berryberry. It was given to me by a woman by the name of Shelby Berryberry. But there are other forms of it as well, and one of the ones that I like a lot is called Big Sombrero. These are little flowers, okay? So picture Big Sombrero. It's not this big, it's this big. But the beauty of these, all of these in the Bjorn group, is that they flower all summer long. And while each flower is very dainty, so they don't have what we call 50-mile-an-hour power, where you wouldn't plant it out by the roadside for people driving by to see. You want to plant it someplace you walk by, or someplace you sit, like on the patio. And there you can really appreciate their flowers. Yes?
I have crispa and Sakura, and the thing that I like about them in the fall is their seed heads are so decorative.
Absolutely. Yep.
Sakura has such a big puffball of seeds, and then crispa has those little, I don't know, kind of like little claws coming
Yes.
out.
Yes.
So they're very...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a whole other season of ornament for the plants. And those will hold on, depending on how your weather is. I know it gets pretty windy out here. Depending on how your weather is, those seed heads can hold on for